With more and more people interested in the game lately, a new operation is seeming more and more likely to happen sometime soon, since it will make Valve lots of money. With the new operation there will be tons of new skins, which is going to be amazing. But the fact is, those skins are mostly untouchable until we get them. We can't know what they are. We do know that the Anubis collection will be somewhat themed towards the ancient Egypt, but apart from that we don't know much. But what if I tell you I know what the next operation case will contain? Of course we can never be certain, but we can get a pretty good idea by simply thinking about it. I know everyone's talking about the next knives and if we will get new knife finishes or existing knives with existing finishes. So let's talk about it. After this video you will not only understand what I think the next golds in the case will be, but also what they might look like. And I'm gonna bet you it's different than you're thinking right now. Hey you killed, what do you mean with new finishes? Well, in CSGO there are multiple different types of knives and gloves. At the beginning of the game, when they released the first case, there was only one big set of finishes, and they applied all of them to all of the knives in CSGO. The cases that got released all had different skins, but the knives were the same. As the game grew bigger and bigger, Valve realized that people were getting bored of the old knives, and selling something new and shiny would sell a lot better. That's why with the Huntsman case they released one new knife with the same vanilla finishes. After it worked the first time, they did that style of one new knife per case with a few cases, releasing a knife every once in a while and also reusing the old knives. After doing 5 of those types of cases, people still got bored of the old finishes, and thus with the chroma case it finally became time to do something even slightly creative. With these new finishes on the original knife, there now finally arose a sort of grid that you can see, where you have the finish group at the top and the type of knife on the left. Valve can make all combinations between all of those knives and all of those finishes, which gives them a lot of future updates before they run out. In short, this all continued for a while. There were other sets of knives introduced, other sets of finishes, and a couple more combinations added throughout the years. Basically, this is where we are now. Valve essentially have a couple of options to choose from. Number 1. They can add a set of new knife designs, which would contain 4 new knives, and the first ones would 99% sure be with the OG finishes. Option 2. They can add a new set of finishes, which would almost certainly be on the OG knives. Valve has never released a new set of finishes or a new set of knives on something else than the OGs. So they've never started out a new thing somewhere else other than there or there. The third option. They can introduce a new combination of existing knives and existing finishes that we don't have yet. For example, this spot, which would contain the Shattered Web knives with the chroma finishes. This used to be a really rare option since they didn't have a lot of knife sets and they didn't have a lot of finish sets either, but now that they're starting to increase in those amounts, it's starting to become more and more common. In the future, this option will become by far the most common option Valve will use, since the amount of combinations will increase as you go up the scale, but the amount of new finishes won't increase as much, and the amount of new knives won't increase either, because it's a scale that is to the power of 2 now. Option 4. There is another option, but for dramatic effect I will reveal that later. Now that we know what options Valve has and how the situation currently is, we can look at what Valve did in the past. Valve usually saved the options 1, 2 and 3 for operations, so a release of new finishes, new knives or just a new combo can be special with the operation. With other cases that they release during the year, they reuse old combinations that we have already seen before. For example, the last case that we got was the recoil case, and the recoil case had gloves that we already had seen before in the Snakebite and Operation Broken Fang cases. They do this mainly to create some more supply for those items, because there is a lot of demand for cheap gloves, but a lot of gloves are not cheap, and if they just keep releasing new items without building up some supply of all the old golds, they will be all very expensive, and people who just want to play the game casually, like most players, won't be able to afford them. So with some people speculating that the next operation will be coming very soon, everyone is discussing what Valve will do next. Some people are saying a new combination of 2 existing finishes, which is most likely because there's the most options there. Right now that could either be the Shattered Web knives in the chroma finishes that would fit in here in the graph, or it would be the danger zone knives or the horizon knives, whatever you want to call them, in the gamma finishes. And those would fit in there in the graph. They could also release the shattered web knives with the gamma finishes, but they've never done something like that by skipping a hole, so I don't think they will do that. Some people are saying new finishes, like for example these ones, and some are saying new knives. If I had to choose one of those, I would say new finishes. Look at the graph, there's a gap there that needs to be filled to make the angle even again. Plus new finishes would generate a lot of new hype for the game, since the last time we got finishes is a long time ago. But like I hinted at earlier, Valve has a fourth option. They don't have to release knives at all. They also have the gloves to deal with now. Gloves work differently than knives, since they don't release every finish on every glove. This is because most of them don't fit together. For example, imagine the Vice Gloves finish on a Broken Fang glove. That would look really weird. That means that every time they want to release something new in the game, they have to release new glove finishes. They can't just reuse old finishes on new types of gloves, because they don't fit together. And that's also what they've done in the past. They do sometimes make another copy of something or a new different type of a finish, but they don't really use the same finishes over and over again like they do with knives. They do reuse the same types of gloves, for example sport gloves, Hydra gloves, which then become a different operation each time, or they use those types of gloves, but they don't reuse the finishes. So I think we're going to get new glove finishes for the next operation, but why do I think that is most likely, and also what would they look like? Well, I will show you tons of examples of new gloves later, but first of all, I want to show you some pure data. These are the last 5 cases from the last 5 operations. You can see what operation they are from and what rare special item they have contained. Now, if you're a keen-eyed viewer, you might have spotted something. There seems to be a pattern of them alternating knives and gloves every other operation. This has been going on ever since the gloves were introduced with the Hydra operation. Since we got the new gamma finishes in the last operation case, which were on knives, that would now mean that we would be getting new gloves. Now, of course, that is just a pattern and no one can hold me accountable for saying that, but there is way more. And also, Valve do love sticking to patterns. They always do the same thing time and time again. We also now need to look at the current numbers for number of knives and gloves in the game. Of course, gloves were introduced way later than knives, but it is still important. Even though glove cases contain way more different glove finishes, they are still outnumbered by a lot. For example, checking on buff for field tested gloves and knives, there are 72 glove finishes in field tested. And there are 287 knife finishes. That is a big difference, but isn't that a fair difference? To be fair, we don't need to have an equal amount of knives and gloves as long as the demand matches it. But is that true? Well, not really. Gloves are at least at the same level as knives at this point, if not more popular. This is probably because gloves are objectively better than knives. Gloves take up more space on the screen most of the time, and they are even visible when you hold your weapon. Plus, there is a lot more variety in the different glove skins, so more options to choose from as well. Even though there's a lot of different knives, there's only a couple finishes that they keep repeating on different knives. Like the finishes keep being the same. For example, there's like 20 different knives that are all in the fade finish. For example, no gloves share one finish. That means that even though there's way more knives, there are more glove finishes in the game than knife finishes. That's something to wrap your head around. In general, it would be a lot better to match the amount of gloves to the amount of knives for variety and for continuity's sake. So another reason to push out some more different gloves. You might say that's already a lot of reasoning to think that there's new gloves coming, but there's even more. Because we still have to look at it from Valve's perspective. What is the one thing that Valve cares about most? You can say it with me. Money! Yeah, it's cringe, but they do love it. Well, anyway, how does money influence the decision to get new gloves instead of knives? Well, that is because of the cases and the way Valve makes money from them. If we look at the case opening numbers by Fietic, we see the massive demand for glove cases. I made the cases with gloves in them red, so you can see how influential they are. Even though there's currently only 6 glove cases in the entire game compared to 37 cases that contain knives, the glove cases still cover this much of the total opening demand from last month. And this is what Valve sees. Valve sees the money they take in from cases, which is literally just these numbers. So if they want to take more money, they are going to see, we did glove cases in the past, it's time to do another glove case, and they're also really profitable. Look at Clutch. It's still their best case, even though it's so old. It would almost be dumb not to do a glove case at this point. If I was Valve, who wanted to make a bit of extra cash after a disappointing major, I would look at these really popular glove cases and think, might as well do that. Also, Valve do love doing unexpected things that we didn't see coming, so with everyone, literally everyone, look on Twitter talking about the next knives in CSGO, releasing a case full of gloves would be their type of move. Like I said on Twitter, I would find it logical that they would make new knife skins for the game, if they would make new knives in this case at all, but because of the reasons posted in this video, I don't think they will make new knives anyway. They could do new knives like these ones, or different ones to be honest, but it seems unlikely. Valve chooses the path of least resistance, and that might mean they keep with their pattern of alternating between gloves and knives with every operation. With the recent updates to the major, or rather lack thereof, we have seen that Valve are really skimping out on their major updates. Just look at the new champion stickers and you will see how lazy they really are. They're just copy pasted with the logo on there. This could mean they are very busy with the next operation, but it could also mean they are just lazy. I don't think that is the case, however, since an operation is one of the best ways for Valve to make money. If they don't put in time and effort into an operation, they might as well not put in any work into the game at all. Valve must at least somewhat be aware of the fact that we were underwhelmed and a bit disappointed by the last operation. They must also know that putting in that extra bit of effort will give us extra confidence in them, which is good for the market in the long term. And as we have discussed in this video, that means that it is long term very good for Valve, because they can make a lot more money from the game. So then, if we're gonna get new gloves, what could they look like? Well, of course Valve will design their own finishes, and so all of the following mockups are just ideas, but they can give us a really good idea of what it might be. I want to introduce you to the Twitter account of Gemsri Gregory. Most of his Twitter is just mockups and cool renders of CSGO knives and gloves. He also has a lot of ones that don't exist yet in the game, which could give us a good look at what is still possible with the new glove finishes. Just look at some of these epic gloves. Imagine getting these in the game. This guy really deserves a follow, if you're still on Twitter, that is. His link is in the description, check it out. People often don't realize how much new stuff is still possible in CSGO. The fact that Vice gloves are the most expensive right now doesn't have to mean that it will be the best forever. And skins are subjective either way, so more new and different skins makes the game more and more personalizable, which is good for the game and everything around it. Some of these glove combos are absolutely phenomenal. The other nice thing about the skins market and the way it is structured is that Valve can reuse old gun finishes as knife or glove finishes and vice versa. For example, the print stream finish is really popular among skins enthusiasts. Valve knows this as well, so they will probably eventually make gloves and knives with that finish on them. If not now, they will eventually. It's just too good of a business opportunity to pass up on. So, the next operation case, what do you think will happen? Will we get gloves, like I am suspecting, or will we be getting knives despite all of the indications we looked at in this video? Tell me what you think in the comments. I love talking about this with you guys. I react to every comment I get. If you want to trade your old items for new ones, you can send me a trade with the link in the description. My fees are very low and I have a lot of different items to choose from. I also buy and sell skins too, plus I have plenty of buff balance available if you need something very specific. Always open to help or discuss. You can add me on Steam or Twitter as well. So, we're getting gloves, at least in my opinion. But apart from that, we won't know almost anything about the next operation, right? Well, we know a maximum date before which it has to happen, and we know the name of one of the collections, and we actually know way more. How we know all of this and exactly what all of that information is can be found in this video. If you're still watching, you are truly awesome. Thank you, goodbye.